What's up, y'all? Welcome. Ooh, that was an icky introduction. Welcome back. My name is Khumo. This is KM Healing. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today we're talking Sex and Gender 101. Yay! Okay, so we're gonna make this short and sweet. We're going through just a few things, but I'm gonna tell you a little bit about myself. If you have not watched one of wow, I'm speaking fast. My name is Khumo. I am a licensed mental health counselor currently practicing in New York, but I am also providing online coaching / therapy services to people in South Africa. Most of my work focuses on Black and Brown people, Indigenous people, queer people, all the people. If you haven't seen one of my videos before, these are just really, well, firstly, thank you for coming. These are just really short educational videos that I provide for free. If you have any feedback, I would love to hear what types of things you would like to see. If you're looking for more information on these things, I am going to be providing longer, paid for workshops that will kind of go into depth about these things. Today's workshop is for everybody. This is not specifically for queer folks, but if you're somebody who wants to understand more about the difference between biological, physiological sex and gender, this is really important. The window's open. Please hold. Okay. Yeah, so if you're looking to learn more about sex and gender, this is absolutely for you, always for you. If you see me looking to the side a little bit, that's because I have my notes right here. So what are you going to gain from these workshops? Hopefully just a little bit of a better understanding about yourself and maybe learn something new about, the experience of being a human being in this world. So what we're going to cover today is really just the basics of what is biological / physiological sex. What does that mean in the context of, this workshop specifically, other biological presentations, and we're going to go over some gender definitions and a little bit about how to relate to the gender binary. And then at the end I'm going to have a little bit of a journal activity for us. So biological sex, the basics. We have XY chromosomes, which we associate with the male sex, and we have XX chromosomes, which we associate with the female sex. People who have XY chromosomes will generally develop broader shoulders, a higher amount of testosterone in their body, deeper voice, things like that, while people with XX chromosomes will generally either develop fat deposits on their chest, we generally call boobs, a vulva, ovaries, things like that. Those are the things that we generally associate with these two chromosomal presentations. Both of these chromosomal presentations produce testosterone and estrogen. And so we want to hold space for the fact that in reality, this binary is really not that helpful in defining actual human people. There are other biological presentations where someone's genitalia or physiological presentation can be different with what we ordinarily associate with male or female, and they might produce genitalia that is more ambiguous or maybe have different physiological presentations, like maybe someone with X chromosomes could be born without ovaries, or someone with XY chromosomes could not have a penis. And this is just like two examples, and often we call folks with different presentations that are maybe don't necessarily fit into the binary biological presentations that we've learned over time, call these folks intersex people. There is nothing wrong with being intersex. It generally is just regular human variation, in the same way that there is variation between how our bodies look as human beings. So what is gender identity then, right? If our biological sex does not necessarily determine what we look like or, what our gender is, then what is gender identity? Gender identity is how we, in our heads, describe ourselves, how you feel as a human being. It is not what your physiological presentation shows you. It is not what your genitals look like, what your body looks like. It is how you feel in your head, right? Some words that people can use to describe gender identity can be man, woman, transgender man, transgender woman, transgender person, androgynous person. So gender identity, how we feel in our heads. Gender expression, this is how we express our gender to the world, right? So there's the part that's in our head, and then there's the part about what we show people. We can do this by using pronouns, we can do this with our clothes, we can do this with language, we can do this with our voice, changing our voices, our hairstyles, and often we kind of associate different expressions with either masculine or feminine ways of presenting. And these are only binary narratives, right? These are often ways that our external environment has decided that we're allowed, quote unquote, to present. So gender expression does not have to fit into those binaries, right? And in fact, there are gender identities that don't fit into those binaries too. So we can relate to the binary on so many different levels. I don't think about it as a line, I think about it more as a constellation. We can relate to it as one or the other. We can relate to it in the middle. We can relate around it. We can relate to tons of different genders, right? We can relate to pieces of each one of them, right? There are a plethora of genders that even we as human beings don't know about. So when we put sex and gender together, that can be really harmful, right? Because that creates a lot of internal narratives about self that feel like we're in the wrong for believing something else or feeling comfortable in different ways. And that is where mental health comes from, right? Issues with mental health are not based on the fact that someone is different to what our society has decided the binary consists of. Issues with mental health come from the ways that people are treated for being different, for having different ideas of what their gender expression or gender identity is. And that is where the problems come in. So when our sex and gender align, we consider ourselves cisgender. Or someone else whose gender and biological sex don't align, they'd be considered a transgender person, right? And really, these are just two ways of acknowledging in what ways we relate to our sex, our biology, and our gender. So some reminders: our gender and biology are not mutually exclusive. It's okay to question your gender in the same way that it is to question your sexuality. Gender is a construct that is usually used to define people and often used to harm people in a lot of ways. What you feel about your gender is far more important than what you're told. And biology is something that may be stable, but our gender is fluid. So let's go into a little bit of a journal activity. I want you to think a little bit about what are your first memories of being told you are a certain gender, right? What did that look like for you? Did somebody tell you that something you were doing was not okay for your gender? Was there something that you did that made you feel uncomfortable in your gender? And the second question, in what ways does your gender expression shift from day to day? Right? We want to hold space for the ways in which our gender identity might be stable from moment to moment, but sometimes our gender expression changes. Something else to think about too is that our gender identity can shift as well. Thank you for coming. I would love it if you would keep in touch. I am on Instagram and Twitter at kmhealing_. Feel free to email me, Khumo@kmhealing.com, if you're looking for services, looking for consultation, mental health consulting. If you would like to, and I would super appreciate it, if you would fill out the feedback form on my website, kmhealing.com. If you go to my resources page under the workshops at the very bottom, you'll see a feedback form that can tell me a little bit about what kinds of videos you'd like to see more of, and if you have any feedback about the videos that I've done. Thank you so much.